Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie and thank you so much for joining me today. I have a fun little autumnal themed vlog for you. I'm so excited. We are talking dark academia novels. I'm so excited to talk about this because dark academia is just one of the many pillars of the autumn season, and it is a big genre here on BookTube, and it's a genre that I think is so fascinating. I've definitely had a mix of luck with this genre. I've read several that I did not care for, and I've read several that I've really enjoyed. I do have quite the haul of dark academia novels, but I could not get to all of them in the short couple weeks that I had, so today we're going to be talking about 3 of them, and the rest will be in part 2. For those of you that do not know what dark academia is, it is basically exactly what it sounds like. It's a subgenre of fiction, but also a kind of aesthetic that people have created. It features a lot of old, prestigious academic institutions, scholars, the study of classics. Typically, it has involved some sort of obsession with power and ambition and greatness that leads to corruption. A lot of times it follows protagonists who embark on a journey to study something or to gain knowledge, and it inevitably drives them to do very dark deeds. This genre was basically invented by this book, The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This will be featured in my part 2. But I'm not going to go too much into it because I think that the queen of dark academia YouTube, the Book Leo, already has an amazing video on that subject, and I will link it down below. She has everything you could possibly ever need to know or want to know about dark academia, including some of her recommendations, and one of them did end up on this list. Well, I have 3 books, 2 of which are recent or recent-ish releases. They're very, very popular books. BookTube is all about them, so I just had to read them because I was both interested in them on their own, but also I've just seen amazing praise for them. And then a third is just what I think is a staple of the season, even though it's not necessarily dark academia, but it kind of influences all of the mood and everything about dark academia, and you'll see what I mean in a second. So the first book that I picked up, and the first one we're going to talk about, is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is the author of the Poppy War series. This is her recent release, brand new release, and I was so excited to dive into this, so I will just leave all of my thoughts for the vlog. The second book I picked up was a book that I've been trying to get my hands on for a long time, but obviously so is everybody else, and that book is Bunny by Mona Awad. And the third book on my list today, which is actually a play, that is Shakespeare's Macbeth. So there you have it. Those are the 3 books that I will be talking about in this vlog, and I'm putting my final thoughts of all 3 of them at the end of each segment. So if you just want to hear my final thoughts completely after having finished all of the books, go ahead and you can scroll to the end of those segments. But otherwise, the vlog is my thoughts reading these in real time. Talking about my own history with dark academia novels, I have read several, but unfortunately haven't loved the majority of them. I read Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and while I think I see why people like that, that did not work for me. I gave it 2 stars, so sorry Ninth House fans, that one did not work for me. I also read The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. That was very, very, very not good in my opinion. That was a 1-star read. So I had a rough time with dark academia in the past, but I am determined to keep reading and find one that I love because I love the concept. I loved college. I loved being a scholar. I studied literature. I studied English. All of that was really up my alley. So I love the concept of dark academia, but I struggled to find one that I loved, so that was my mission for this entire project. Alright, we are talking about Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is the August 2022 brand new Dark Academia release that is taking BookTube by storm. For one thing, I do think it just needs to be said that I absolutely hate big books. So I was already intimidated to read this, but I was very excited to pick it up because it has absolutely glowing reviews. So I put my big book fear aside and decided to pick this up. I am 100 pages in out of almost 600. I have just reached chapter 6, so I've read the first 5 chapters, and already I have a lot of thoughts about this book. I think to talk about this book, I first also want to just mention how R.F. Kuang is just a very, very, very highly educated woman. She has a master's of philosophy in Chinese studies from Cambridge, a master's of science in contemporary Chinese studies from Oxford, and she's currently pursuing a PhD in East Asian languages and literature from Yale. So this girl is familiar with prestigious academic institutions. She is really familiar, intimately familiar with the setting, not only of this book, but just the settings that we see in dark academia novels in general. She's bringing a really unique perspective to the dark academia genre, and this is such a needed addition to the dark academia genre. It's one that I'm going to continue to mention whenever, and I think I'm not alone in this, but whenever we talk about dark academia moving forward, I think this is going to be included in the conversation because it's much, much, much needed. The dark academia genre is typically features mainly white, wealthy men, and very rarely does anybody else get to be featured in these stories, and I think it's really amazing that R.F. Kuang is changing that with this story. So for a brief overview of what this is a new take on the dark academia genre, and it does include a little bit of magic, so it's part low fantasy, but that magic element is introduced super early, so it's not going to be halfway through the book suddenly you're hit with magic. It's very much part of the core of the story, and the magic itself actually has to do with languages. So this follows our protagonist Robin. He is a Chinese boy in the 1830s, and he is living in the city of Canton when a plague sweeps through the city. It kills his entire family, and he is on the brink of death when a strange man comes and plucks him from his home country, takes him to his English manor, and tells Robin that he is going to study languages and that one day he will be admitted to the Translators Institute at the University of Oxford. Basically, Robin is brought to the Translators Institute because the magic is kind of using different languages to create incantations which then manipulate the world, and they need someone to translate the Asian languages, and he is fluent in Chinese and Cantonese, so he is brought to the Translators Institute so that they can start using Chinese incantations. While he's at Oxford, Robin meets a kind of secret underground society of rebels who tell him that the magic that he's learning how to do at the Translators Institute is basically being stolen from the people and culture to whom those languages actually belong to, and then they're being stolen and used for greed and power for basically only the ruling white male class. So from then, Robin has to decide if he is going to join the Society of Rebels and try to take down the Institute, or if he is going to continue down the path that his guardian has led him down and become a part of the Institute of Babel. So like I said, I am only 100 pages in, and already so much has happened. Basically that entire synopsis, that is what happens right out of the gate. So 100 pages in, we have had our main character move to his new country. We've had him be assimilated into English life. He's been to Oxford. He's seen the institute that he'll be studying at, and he's met the secret society of rebels. So a lot happens in the first 100 pages, and while I do think that a lot of readers will enjoy that because it does have such a fast pace, for me, I kind of wished that it would slow down a little bit because we are given so much plot and so much information in the first 100 pages that what we do lose out on is Robin as a character. I will be honest and say that for me it is very intimidating to talk about this book because a lot of people really, really love it. And while I think the concept is amazing, and while I'm really interested in the discussions that this is having, the execution for me is, I'm just not loving it 100%. And the reason for that is basically that I feel like everything is moving really, really fast, and it's difficult to understand Robin as his own person, because so far, like I said, I'm only 100 pages into the book, but so far I don't feel like I really know who Robin is. He's a very, quiet, kind of subdued main character, and he doesn't really want to rock the boat. So because of that, we're kind of just watching the world move around him rather than seeing him kind of make his own decisions and have specific motives that he himself is expressing to us. We're often told a lot of things. Things are told to Robin about how he should feel, how he should act, what he should be. But at this point, we haven't really got a chance to see what Robin himself actually thinks about these topics. Additionally, just as like a personal preference of mine, I think that for me, the themes are like quite heavy-handed. In the first 100 pages, we know exactly what this book is going to be about. It's about anti-colonialism, and kind of at every step of the process, we are being told a lot of information and either like why it's good or bad to think a certain thing. For me personally, I think it would be more interesting if we got to have Robin kind of work through some of these issues that he's facing a little bit more internally, because here we have a character who is taken from his home country kind of like without really much of a choice. He's thrust into a really prestigious institution that he knew nothing about beforehand, and then when he gets there, he's treated very poorly by the rest of the student body because he is Chinese. And during this time, the school did not allow for anybody other than white males to be educated at the school. I feel like in order for the conflict to really be interesting, Robin has to have a kind of love and appreciation for the institution before he realizes that this institution is upholding a certain status quo, a certain status of power that actually undermines people like him. But because we're just told right away, and Robin is told right away, that this is what the institution is doing, I don't really feel like that gives him an opportunity to come to that conclusion himself. Something else that happens in this book, which actually I've never seen in a novel before, so that was really interesting to read, but R.F. Kuang will actually put footnotes in the book, and kind of in these footnotes, it's as if she, the author, is talking to us, the reader, and this is where she will kind of put historical context for things, and she will just put her vast array of knowledge about the historical context of all of the situations she's speaking about, anything specific about language she will put there. And on the one hand, I'm super interested in these footnotes because I'm learning a lot. I'm like, these footnotes are super, super, super interesting. This is where she will kind of include any direct translations of Chinese writing, or just to give a little interesting kind of fact that applies to the situation that's being spoken about. And so I'm learning a lot, and I do like that. However, there have been certain times where I would have rather just had that information like in the actual text, like embedded into the text, instead of having a character say something and then in the footnotes have a historical note about that thing. I would rather have multiple characters having dialogues and discussions that includes that historical context, because I think that that information and how certain characters react to the goings-ons in the world at the time, I think that would be really enlightening for who they are as people. But instead, we're kind of just given a piece of dialogue by a character, and then in the footnotes, she will say, like, something about their thinking being influenced by such and such decision. And I would just rather have that actually be part of the text rather than a footnote, because again, that goes back to the characters and creating their motivations and developing who they are. I am absolutely not surprised that this works for a lot of people. I wish it was working better for me. Like I said, the execution is just, I'm just not loving it. The one thing that, like, what I do think is really excellent is that the writing style is right in the middle. It's not over embellished, but it's not super bland, so I think it is going to be accessible and appealing for a wide variety of readers, which is excellent. But for me, I do find the fact that the themes are so overt in the first 100 pages. I do find that a bit distracting, because it kind of feels like the author is holding my hand to make sure that I understand the message. And the thing is that it's spoken so directly. Like, you could not possibly misconstrue what the theme of this book is, even in the first 100 pages. And I think, like, I would rather have an experience where the main character discovers something. And I mean, obviously, like, with so much left of the book, I'm not really sure what Robin will discover, but I would rather have it be a little bit more subtle in the beginning and then have the themes become clearer as the character becomes more changed by their situation. Like I said, I'm intimidated talking about this because so many people love it, and I don't think it is bad by any means. Like, just because I'm not enjoying it 100%, it doesn't mean that, like, this is, you know, not a good book or something like that. And I think this is actually a very, very, very important addition to the dark academia canon. Like I said, I will continue to talk about this book whenever I talk about dark academia. It's doing really important work, and it's just important to realize when we read stories about prestigious institutions that we are recognizing that those institutions have power because they have upheld a status quo which oppressed others. That is what this book is talking about. This is talking about anti-colonialism on a grand scale, but it's also then applying it to the world of academia, and how what has been defined as prestigious and of high value has been defined by white males for the vast majority of history. So yeah, I mean, I will continue to move forward with this. I hope that there is kind of a shift. I hope that now, because we've gotten past just the basically book jacket synopsis, that there's going to be a lot more to this story. But we will see how it progresses for me. Again, like I said, I don't like big books, so I'm not going to tell myself that I'm necessarily beholden to finishing this if I don't like it. But obviously, I want to love this. I really, really, really do, because everybody else seems to really like it, and I think it's a great addition to the dark academia canon. So I will continue forward with it, and I hope that I start to really love it. Hello, let's chat. I know that a peach tank top is not really the dark academia vibes, but it is 90 degrees here. So I guess I was a little bit premature on wanting to have my dark academia vibes because I was tricked. It's not fall here yet. So yeah, it's 90 degrees and I'm not gonna put on a sweater yet. Okay, some updates. So first of all, great news. I was able to get to page 250 of Babel. I was so close to DNFing this. On page 100, I was not having a good time. Like, I won't lie. I was not having a good time at page 100, but almost immediately after that, like right at the start of chapter 6, things really turned around for me. I think it's because right then is when we actually got the school, we got our little friend group who really developed as characters. We got more information about the magic system, and Robin really just became more of an interesting character. Before, like in the first 100 pages, I felt like he was a complete like just blank slate and he didn't really have any emotions, and he was just a way for characters to just like talk to us, the readers, and just like inundate us with information. But starting at chapter 6, he really starts to have his own opinions on things, and he starts to make decisions for himself, and after that it's just a much more interesting story. Things definitely do get more interesting when that happens. One thing that I noticed, and I just really hope that no one gets mad at me for saying this, so I apologize in advance, but this feels a lot like Harry Potter in a lot of ways. Just the friend group is super reminiscent of Harry, Ron, and Hermione. And there's even a scene in this 150-page section that I read that was so reminiscent of a moment in Harry Potter that I was like, is she like intentionally trying to reference, not reference Harry Potter, but like, is she trying to make us notice that connection? Or was it just, I mean, and not like that moment in Harry Potter was special or like it had never been done before, but it is just such a memorable moment, I think, for a lot of people. So like I said, I hope nobody gets mad at me for saying that, but this section that I read really had a lot of Harry Potter vibes. It's fun. I like the friend group. The group of the 4 friends I think are really excellent. I love the school. We get chapters that are basically like you are in the class with them and you are learning about languages and the origins of words and things like that. And so like it's a lot of actual educational material as well, but it's fun to read, and then you get a little bit of magic as well. So I'm just right at the halfway point, or almost to the halfway point, and I think I kind of know what the rest of the book is going to be, but I don't even care. Like, I'm just happy that I was able to get over that hurdle that I was having at the 100-page mark. And also, in this section, the footnotes kind of significantly go down. There's not as many, and I feel like the footnotes that are in there are just kind of just an extra piece of material. It's not like changing the way that we're perceiving the story necessarily, which is sometimes I did feel like that in the first 100 pages. Yeah, I'm really just happy that I was able to get over the issues that I was having with the first 100 pages, and then once we got into them actually at Oxford, like in the school setting, that's when things got really fun for me. And yeah, I have like renewed hope that I am going to finish this this weekend. So I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And then also, while I was deciding if I was going to continue on with Babel, I also just decided to pick up something else and just to see how I was feeling. And so I picked up Bunny by Mona Awad. This is the second Dark Academia book that I had on my list for this year. And ooh, I actually started this book earlier in September and I had to stop. I had to put it down because I had other library books that had to be returned, so I needed to get to them. And let me tell you, it was so hard to stop reading this book at 50 pages. I did not want to put it down. This is ooh, how do I even describe what this is? This is dark academia, but it's also kind of horror. It's also like a dark comedy. It is truly a genre-defying book. I can't think of anything else that I would even compare this to. But, you know, for those of you that do know what this is, you are not going to be surprised to hear that, I mean, it is just absolutely insane. It is completely... I'm kind of just, like, my jaw's on the floor. I don't even know what to say. It's just so insane. And for those of you that don't know what this follows our protagonist, Samantha, who is doing an MFA program at a prestigious university, and she meets this group of 4 girls who are also in her program, and there is something off about these girls. They're kind of mean girls, but they are just... there's just something not right about them. And one day, out of the blue, Samantha gets invited to a party that they're hosting, and kind of against her better judgment, she decides to go, and events unfold, is what I will say. This is just so weird and bizarre and unsettling, but at the same time, like, you just have to know, you want to keep going because you just have to know what is happening here. Like, I am so deeply, deeply interested and intrigued about what is going on and what is going to be the answer to this just absolutely bizarre behavior. I mean, I don't want to say too much, but because I really think that just the less you know, the more fun it is, because I didn't know anything about this other than it was super weird and I've been having a great time. And also what I think is really fun is that not only are there these like obvious big moments of like some just insane stuff goes down, but then Awad also does this like really amazing thing in her writing where like even at the small like sentence level things will just feel off or like just unsettling a little bit. And there are some sentences that are just like so brilliantly hilarious. Like, the atmosphere of this book isn't funny. It's actually very atmospheric. It's talking a lot about fall and like the university and the creepiness of the town. Like, this town just has serial killers running around it, and it's just kind of like a terrible place to live. Like, it's extremely dangerous, and the college is just in the middle of this like seriously heinous place, which is hysterical. Even in individual sentences, just something will be off or weird. And I think it's amazing that you can have these like tiny moments and just around every corner something weird is going to happen. And it's a really fun like connection to the like big, insane, just completely bizarre moments in the book. I'll probably just wait until I'm completely done with it to give the next update, but I am having such a good time with this. I also will maybe finish this weekend, which would be so amazing. This would actually be the last book on my September book board, which is just, it's so rare that I actually cross off everything from my book board in a month. So to be able to cross this off would be so wonderful. I have been having a good couple days of reading. I'm just having such a great time with this, and I can't wait to get even farther into it. And then Babel, I'm so happy that I not only stuck with it, but I also started to have a lot of fun. Hey, I'm back. I have just reached section 5 of Babel, which means that I have just about 120 pages left. So I'm so close to the end, and it's time for another update because it's been just under 200 pages. And yeah, let's chat. Again, none of this is going to have spoilers, so I'm just talking about my general feelings about the experience of reading this without going into any plot details, but we can still chat in like some broader strokes about how I'm feeling. Well, I have just been having a really wonderful time with this. I'm so glad that I continued on with it and that I didn't give it up. Like, I'm not going to lie, like I already said, I struggled with the first 100 pages of this, but then like immediately after that, it's just been a wonderful reading experience. And like the prose is so compulsively readable, you just want to keep going because there is definitely a fast pace in here. There's constantly action, there's constantly information, you're constantly presented with something new, and it just asks you to keep going, which is really excellent. But in a different way than it was like in the first 100 pages, because what I struggled with early on was the pace, because I thought it was actually this is surprising to say with a 600-page book, but I thought it was actually moving way too fast. Like, I just felt like the first 100 pages were quite impersonal, and that it was just giving me a bullet list of, like, all the things that, okay, like, here's everything we're going to cover in this book, here's all the characters, here's the setting, just, like, and, like, I know that that's how you need to set up a book in your first 100 pages, but it just felt like we were just given all of the concepts, like all of the themes, everything that was going to be worked through in this novel was just kind of like written out and told to us in such a direct way. And we were just told so much information that I felt that the character, our protagonist of Robin, was just getting really lost. And I was struggling to connect with him because I didn't really feel like he was able to give his own opinion or his own thoughts or just really anything other than just like watching things happen. So that just wasn't something that I loved. But basically, like, immediately after that 100-page mark, it completely shifted. And Robin really kind of came out of his shell as a character. We really delved into the other characters around him. We explored their relationships to each other, and everything just got much more fleshed out. The themes got fleshed out. The conflict got fleshed out in a really interesting way. And just everything kind of came together in this middle section. This thought came to me while I was reading this most recent section, and I'm not saying that this is what happened, but this is what it felt like to me. It felt like the first 100 pages were kind of written as like a proof of concept, like something that you might send to a publisher to show, like, here's my idea, here's what it's going to look like. And it just is written in a way that is just intentionally describing what the book is at its, like, very core. And that, like I said, I'm not saying that the first 100 pages were actually the proof of concept, but to me that's what they felt like. Because immediately, like, once we were done with those first 100 pages, then there was just a really significant shift in the way the story was being told. Even the writing, to some degree, the writing got a lot warmer, and I felt like I was really with the characters first and foremost. And so I mean, I'm not really sure why that was the case, but I just felt that once we got past that 100-page mark, things just like really took off in a way that I like it in my book. Yes, there's a lot of action. There's so much action in this book, actually. But what I mean is that it actually started going a lot deeper into all of our characters, and specifically into Robin as a character. As I'm saying this, it sounds so weird. Like, obviously in the first 100 pages, like, you're just meeting the characters and the settings and all the things are being set up. Like, I get it. That's not what I mean. I mean that, like, the way in which the story was being presented shifted a little bit. In the first 100 pages, it felt like, this is what we're doing, this is the story, this is like just very, very direct, and we weren't really digging into anything. And then, like I said, later on, it just really kind of opens up and gets to what I think is really like the thematic core of this book. I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I really have had such a great time with this last section. It is so action-packed. At every turn, something is going down, and it's really, really interesting. This next 120 pages, I imagine, is going to be packed, like absolutely brimming with action, which I have heard that Kuang is known for. I'm just so happy that this is turned around. I really am enjoying it a lot now. But I will still stand by what I said in the previous update, which is that it does feel very reminiscent of Harry Potter. And I don't think that that's intentional, or if it is, I don't know if it's like a direct like response to Harry Potter. It doesn't seem like that's would be the case, but there is a lot of things that really remind me of Harry Potter in here. So I will just leave that. I'll just put that out there and just walk away. It's time to finish this thing with only 120 pages left. I am probably just going to sit down and whip through the ending, and then I will be back with my final thoughts and complete review of Babel. Okay, I have finished Babel, and this was just such a rewarding reading experience. Obviously, R.F. Kuang did so much research, and all of that research really lend itself to just a special experience when you're reading this, because not only are you getting the plot and the characters of the book, but you're also getting history lessons and language etymology lessons, and just kind of a really all-encompassing look at the ways in which prestigious institutions have kind of harmed not only minorities, people of color, but also just kind of brainwashed society into thinking and acting a certain way towards these people. I definitely think that this was like a well-plotted book. I think that the characters eventually did become really compelling. I will say, as I've said many times before already in the vlog, but I did think the beginning was a little bit, I mean, not slow, but I did think that it was a little bit underdeveloped, because I felt like we were spending a lot of time trying to catch the reader up to get to where R.F. Kuang really wanted to be so that she could dive into all of these things she was talking about. And on the one hand, I can appreciate a solo novel. That is great. I really do love that, because I do not like series. I can't even remember the last time I finished a series. So, you know, I do love a solo novel. But that being said, I did feel that the beginning was so rushed, and that just meant that it took a minute for me to really get into it. And a couple of the formatting things were just not my favorite in the beginning, but that eventually kind of changed. And then I was completely on board. I will stand by what I said, that this is like tonally similar to Harry Potter in a way. Again, I just don't know if that's intentional or if this is just a byproduct of it taking place at a school and it being like a cohort, like a group of friends. But there were a lot of similarities in that, and it is kind of interesting to almost think of this as a response to Harry Potter, being that like that was such a popular series, which centered white protagonists, even though I know that in the Broadway production they did cast a black actress as Hermione, which is great, but it would be a tough argument to make that that was J.K. Rowling's intention in the book, even though I know she's tried to argue for that online. But I think the idea here being that this is a group of friends at this school that are all people of color, they're all minorities, and they're all treated a certain way because of that, and they have to overcome a lot more than the white students have to overcome on their journey at Oxford and at the Translators Institute. This book is at its core the argument for anti-colonialism and how every single aspect of our lives was shaped by colonialism, and pretty much everything, every privilege that society is afforded is because it has been taken from other people, other countries, other cultures, and used to create the system of power that exists. And this book focuses on taking down that system of power, one specific system of power, which in this magical version of 1830s England is Babel and their magic silver bars that run the country. But of course, without the Translators Institute and the languages that those people are able to provide, the magic doesn't work. So without the people to whom those languages belong, the magic would not be able to make the cities run, and those being English wealthy cities. I would definitely recommend this book to a lot of people. While I personally didn't find it absolutely flawless, especially in the beginning, I still think that there are so many people who would absolutely love this. I would recommend this to fans of Dark Academia. I'd recommend this to people who enjoyed the friend group and the setting of Harry Potter. I would recommend this to people who are interested in how colonialism has shaped society. I would recommend this to people who love a tightly plotted novel and lots of action. There is so much action in here. For as many scenes as there are where you are kind of learning along with the students about the history and about what makes Babel, the institution, run, you are also given so many scenes of action. This book moves at an absolutely breakneck pace, so you are never sitting still for very long. So if that is the kind of book that you like, definitely give this a try. My final rating for Babel is 4 out of 5 stars. In between my Dark Academia novels, I decided to pick up Macbeth by Shakespeare because I am somewhat of a dark academic myself. So like I mentioned in the intro, Macbeth and Shakespeare in general, I think, is almost like a groundwork text in the Dark Academia genre. I had never read this before. I had read Romeo and Juliet in high school, The Tempest in college, and I saw a production of Midsummer Night's Dream in college, so this is my 4th Shakespeare, and by far my favorite. Definitely while I was reading this, I felt like I was a dark academic. I felt like a scholar, and the mood is just perfect. Like, put on some dark classical music and sit in the library reading and annotating this, and you will feel exactly in place with the characters in these books. The reason that I think this is like a pillar work for the genre of Dark Academia is, well, one, it's Shakespeare, and a lot of Dark Academia studies classic literature and especially Shakespeare, but also its themes are really specifically kind of what the dark academia genre is trying to get to. There's ghosts and witches and like murder and madness, ambition, corruption, all of the things that kind of go into making a great dark academia story. I loved this. I loved the story. I loved the themes. I loved the atmosphere. It was a very quick but very, very fun read, so I gave this 5 stars. I feel like I've never loved a Shakespeare as much as this. I think I need to reread Romeo and Juliet and probably some other ones. So let me know what your favorite Shakespeare is down in the comments below so we can all be some dark academics together. Bunny. Okay, as promised, I did not give an update until after I was done because I flew through this ending, and this book is just so wild, and honestly, if crazy, insane, weird, a little bit gory, a little bit horror, if unsettling is the mood that you're after, pick this up. This is a dark academia mixed with a lot of other things. This is kind of a satire of the genre and a bunch of other genres as well. This is more horror leaning, but it definitely does hit that dark, eerie vibe that a lot of dark academia is aiming for. This is a dark academia because it is set at a school. It does revolve a lot around literature and the writing process and art and the work and process that goes into making art. I mean, I will say though, this book is not going to be for the faint of heart. It is weird. It's like I said, gory. I don't want to say anything about the plot because I think you should just go into it completely blind, and that's more fun. But yeah, I've heard that people say that they didn't like the ending because they thought it was too weird and things weren't explained. And I don't think I would agree with them. I actually think it follows its own, in-world logic perfectly well. I don't think I was too confused by the ending. It's weird, but I don't think it's confusing. So, because I'm okay with things that are weird, but I don't like weirdness that just kind of comes out of nowhere and is completely like unrelated from the themes in the story. Like, everything ties together in this book. So if you're worried this is going to be too weird for you, I would say I thought that it followed its own logic perfectly well, and the ending was amazing. I am giving Bunny the same rating that I gave Babel, and that is 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, so now that we've read our first 3, let's take a look at what is on deck for part 2 of this video, which will come out maybe in November, maybe October, I don't know. I have a lot of October spooky season videos coming up, so I'm not sure where Dark Academia will fall in that, but let's see what else is on deck. Of course, we have The Secret History, which I tried to read for this vlog, but these 600-page books, they wanted to be the end of me, so did not get to that, but we'll get to this very, very soon. I'm determined to read this year because I keep putting it off, and now is the time. I also have These Violent Delights, which is one of Leonie's favorite dark academia, and she's the queen of dark academia, so if she says it's good, I trust her, and I can't wait to get to this. I have In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife. I'm so excited. This is a dark academia thriller. It is a murder mystery, which while dark academia does feature a lot of murder, it's not always a mystery. I imagine I'm going to fly through this, and this is one of Kayla Books and Lala's favorite thrillers, so I'm itching to read this. And then I have 2 books that are not quite dark academia, but I feel like they have dark academia vibes. The first one being Middle Game by Shannon McGuire. I actually started reading this week on audiobook, and I am only now just getting to the bit where they actually start college, so I think now it's going to be more dark academia, but I didn't put it into this vlog because the part that I've actually read is not dark academia. But this is about alchemy, which is another thing that comes up a lot in dark academia, and this is about two twins that one is really gifted in like literature and words and languages, and the other is really gifted in math and science. And so this is about their journey to essentially bring their knowledge together and to become alchemical gods. I have Vicious by V.E. Schwab. Believe it or not, I've never read a V.E. Schwab, and this one really calls to me. This is about two genius roommates who met at college, and then they are, I think, continuing to try to one-up each other. Eventually, it leads to deadly consequences. That just sounds like a lot of fun. But I don't think this takes place entirely during college, so it's only tiny, slightly bit dark academia, but definitely the vibes are there. Also on my list is If We Were Villains. This is a really popular dark academia. People have said it is chef's kiss perfection. So there you have it. That is all of the dark academia books on my list, including 3 that we chatted about today. Several of them coming in part 2. I appreciate you guys so much for watching, and let me know in the comments down below, what is your favorite dark academia book? Am I holding it in my hand, or is it something that I don't have on my radar yet? Please let me know. Please check out the Book Leo's channel because she really knows her stuff when it comes to dark academia, and if you are in need of further recommendations, that would be the first place I would look. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I enjoyed making it. Thank you so much for coming along with me, and I will see you next time.